Hello and welcome. You're with me, Abha Bakaya, on this special show where we take a look at Air India, the national carrier who is now back in the Tata hangar and as a private citizen. Tatas are firmly back in the Air India cockpit. After nearly 7 decades, the Tata Group has officially taken over Air India from the government. In this special show, we're going to give you a sneak peek into the upgrades that the Maharaja is likely to get. And there are many of them. To begin with, the much spoken about enhanced in-flight services, but also improved software and training in revenue management. Better utilization of fleet by improving supply of spares. Improved on-time performance, something that will be much talked about. Cargo operations to be streamlined, and corporate culture among employees will be closely looked at and revamped. These are some huge changes that are in the offing for the national carrier that was struggling to stay on its feet. Now moving on to what's in store for passengers. Better and more efficient service, improved tech for ticketing and operations, better choice of food and meals on board. Tatas will also be using their expertise in various sectors to enhance customer experience, from timely flights, smart staff and world-class service. Tatas are, of course, known for their hospitality. Now, while the government has disinvested Air India, the 12,000 employees will have to be retained by the Tatas. So what do employees do now that the Tatas have taken charge? 10,000 employees will be retrenched for 1 year. They will be eligible for voluntary retirement from the 2nd year. Employees can stay in the company colonies for up to 6 months. We'll continue to get benefits like PF and gratuity. Retired employees will continue to get benefits as well. Negotiations with unions to resolve pending demands are ongoing. Let's examine the financials, but before we do that, as the Tatas get down to the task of reviving Air India, there are some key questions on what can flyers expect from an airline run by the Tatas, who already have 2 other airlines, Air Vistara and Air Asia currently. For more on that, we're joined by Jitendra Bhargava, former Executive Director, Air Indian, and the author of the book Descent of Air India. Welcome, Mr. Bhargava, and it's great to have you for this discussion. Let me begin by asking you, what can passengers expect? Because it's much talked about. This is now an airline that's going to have enormous market share and is going to make a huge difference to flyers.
See, there are 2 aspects that passengers must focus on. One, those who were patronizing Air India, that they will have a more reliable airline, consistency in onboard services and ground handling. So there is a big gain for the existing passengers. And for those who have not been patronizing Air India, they will have another option. Many of the young people were not even looking Air India as an option simply because it was government owned. They had a certain perception of the airline, and this perception will change. So therefore, there is a lot for the passengers thanks to this takeover of Air India by Tatas, because you have a reliable airline and a good quality airline, which will not only give a run for the money for the other Indian carriers, but also international carriers, the Gulf and the Southeast Asian carriers, which have hitherto been dominating the Indian skies.
In terms of product quality, Mr. Bhargava, what can we expect? Do you think Air India will reach the kind of level that we see with Air Vistara in terms of service, including for in-flight entertainment, for instance, or better meals?
You'll have to divide the product into 2 aspects. Certain aspects can be attended to in a matter of weeks, like the food, the wine on board, customer attention by the cabin crew, etc., can be done very fast. Because all that they require is to re-engineer the work practices of cabin crew on board, airport staff, etc. And once they've done it, they will deliver. Because what unfortunately happened is that a lot of cabin crew have been in the service industry for long, but did not have the enough motivation, I would say, coming in because of the various kind of salary cuts and everything that was imposed on the staff, etc., by cash-starved Air India. So once you treat the staff properly and professionally, you will see them delivering. So this is what they can do it in the short run. But yes, as far as the quality of aircraft ambience is concerned, it will take time. Unfortunately, we are in COVID times, but not full capacity is being deployed at the moment. So they will have a certain amount of aircraft, certain number of aircraft on ground, which can be taken up for servicing and improving the hardware on board the flights, including in-flight entertainment.
Thank you, Mr. Bhargav, for giving us some insight into what's in store. Now let's examine the financials of the deal and the implications for the accumulated losses of the government and its disinvestment targets for the year. Business Today magazine's Krishna Gopalan joining in with more on that. Krishna, what happens to the accumulated losses of Air India? How much have the Tatas taken on and what happens to the rest?
Well, the loss actually has a bit of an interesting story. It goes back to a time when the whole merger between Air India and Indian Airlines was conceived. So that goes back to 2007-8. And the interesting part is it was a profit-making entity till then. So it's quite obvious that the merger was a bad idea, and the airline has been the red since then. So we are speaking of a good 14 to 15 years. All put together, this is in the range of 78,000 crores. It is accumulated, so it does very much exist on the P&L. The priority for the Tatas right now is they've inherited a loss-making airline, so there's no argument about that one. The priority for the Tatas right now is to turn the airline around, get into some level of cost cutting. What I would anticipate is, given the strength of the Tata Group as a brand, they'll be in a tremendous position to speak to the lenders, get into some form of refinancing, negotiate the rate of interest very hard, and bring those loss figures down substantially. So given their whole track record of having turned around assets and doing some impressive levels of financial re-engineering, I think that should be a relatively easy task for them. Challenging, but eminently doable.
Sure. Krishna, what about this year's disinvestment target? How much of that does this deal impact, and what about the rest?
Well, we are speaking of the government having set out a target of 1.75 lakh crores. If things had gone to plan, we would have, seen the disinvestment of BPCL, and but that, going by media reports, I think is still a while away. We are still woefully short because this brings in only a small proportion of the money which is targeted. So if you break down the numbers completely, we're having about 2,700 crores coming into the government, and the Tata's accumulating debt to the extent of 15,500 crores. So if you take a look at the overall revenue numbers, we are still woefully short because DIPAM's numbers, at least as of date, we are speaking of a revenue of about 9,330 crores. So we're not speaking of that large a number. So we still need the LIC IPO to get off the ground very quickly to kick in the big numbers.
Krishna, thanks so much for joining us on that. Now, as the government completes the historic handover of Air India, we get you the man at the center of the disinvestment process, the DIPAM Secretary, Tuhin Kanta Pandey.
Has Tata's conveyed something that what awaits consumers?
Well, surely I think they really want to turn into a world-class airlines, and a lot needs to be done. Air India has not been in its pink of health for a long time. And I think in a situation where you're always grappling with financial crunch, and when you have also the fact that you are being disinvested, it's also a question of morale. And I think the employees and all the stakeholders will have clarity now going forward. So there could be broader issues of restructuring, broader issues of refurbishing, of customer service, of capital infusion, and certain long-term plans which they can roll out.
Right. So you just mentioned about the employees part. How are the concerns of the employees going to be further taken into consideration? Has there been something conveyed on this note?
I think the concern of the employees has been the foremost in the mind of this. Of course, we have to be doing something in public interest because the taxpayers and others are equally important. But employees certainly, because I think they are the ones who will be worse affected if any organization is closed down or really, liquidated. I think those are the concerns which will really would have meant a tremendous amount of difficulties, not only to the flyers and network, but also the employees. So a sustainable operation going forward. Employees will, I think, maximum gain from, the fact that the organizations will be carried on. And secondly, we have also built in the adequate protection clauses in the employees, for the employees. And many of those demands which were earlier on there for a long time, like, for example, Justice Dharmadhikari, arrears, the issues such as what will happen to the medical benefit of the retired employees and their spouses.
Right.
What is going to happen to our EPFO? I mean, we have Provident Fund, and going forward, how will it, happen? Things like gratuity, Provident Fund, all of these concerns have actually met and satisfactorily. And it is, I believe, for the employees, the Air India continues as their employer, and nothing changes in that sense. But certainly, I think other aspects of how the employees will be, sort of motivated, and others is for the new
the owners
to look at.
To look at, of course.
That's the DIPAM Secretary exclusively right here in India Today. That's all from us for now. Thanks so much for watching.
Very happy to have Air India back in the Tata Group.
The Air India disinvestment transaction is closed. The shares have been transferred to the Tatas.